Welcome back to Gameday Tarps podcast episode 7. Today we're going to start off a little bit different, not talking about sports. Just a quick ode to everyone in our area and region who's either a firefighter or had their lives impacted by the fires going on in British Columbia, whether in Kelowna or the Shuswap. We just want to recognize the firefighters that are doing their best out there, helping everyone and trying to save as many properties as they can, as we know so many have been lost and so many people have been impacted. So we just wanted to start this episode off saying thank you to all of them, saying we hope and have our best wishes going out to those who have been impacted, and we hope for this to be resolved as quickly as possible going forward. Okay, this last week there has been a ton of news in the hockey world, starting off with probably the saddest news being that the Buffalo Sabres longtime announcer Rick Jeanneret had passed away at the age of 81. Anyone who's really a mainstay hockey fan knows Rick's voice, or RJ as they call him, that his calls during so many of Buffalo's important moments when they were extremely successful franchise and in the playoffs every year, his voice really carried that team throughout. So he will be missed. Unfortunately, he didn't have the longest time after his retirement, but I think that's because he did what he loved right up until he knew he couldn't do it anymore. So big hat off to Rick Jeanneret for his great career and a great life, and just a guy who was all around hockey genius in the broadcaster world. We got David Krejci, who then follows Patrice Bergeron out the door. What are you guys' thoughts on David Krejci retiring from the NHL and what that means for Boston?
Well, hell of a career for Krejci, so congrats on that. Enjoy the retirement. But it definitely forces Boston to start looking for centers immediately.
Yeah, the last two remaining guys now from that 2011 Boston Bruins Stanley Cup run is now Brad Marchand being the sole one on the Bruins, and now Tyler Seguin of the Dallas Stars. So definitely an end of an era.
Jonathan Toews is another guy who is taking time away from hockey but has not decided if he's retiring. He's just got to figure out his immune deficiency disease that he's dealing with. We're wondering if he was going to sign with somebody, but obviously he hasn't. Maybe him and Kane are looking to double up on a team later on. I mean, they know Buffalo has tons of cap space. Obviously, that should be a place where Patrick Kane's potentially looking. That's his hometown, but maybe Toews is looking to join him there. Who knows? What are your guys' thoughts on where Toews could potentially end up if he comes back this year or next year?
Definitely hard to tell. I mean, you don't know how this is going to affect them much, and long term, you don't want to be taking too much time away from the ice, right? How much does he got left to give?
I mean, we all know at the end of the day that Patty Kane and Jonathan Toews will one day retire as Blackhawks, and yeah, their jerseys will be in the rafters sooner than later. But I remember even last year's deadline that he was reportedly supposed to go to his hometown team, the Winnipeg Jets, and that never came to be. It was just a big rumor. Jonathan Toews, I mean, he needs to do what he needs to do, take time off to deal with what's going on, because it's bigger than hockey. You have a personal life, you have things going on other than the workplace. You're doing what you love, playing hockey, but at the end of the day, you need to take care of your health and do what matters for sure. So
absolutely, I think he's just got to take care of himself. There's no point on causing serious lifelong harm to his body when he's got kids and he's got a family to think of. He has all the money that he needs. As far as we know, we don't know he's a gambler or anything and lost all of his money. But as far as we know, he's a guy who's, he's got his life in check. He's got the money he needs, take care of his family for the rest of whatever that life looks like. And he should be fine. So I don't think he needs hockey. I think he wants hockey. So we'll see where he ends up.
Oh, the man's gotten enough spotlight. He's won 3 cups. He's won enough gold medals. He's got 2 cover athletes of the NHL. Yeah, he debuted on the NHL 11 cover for EA Sports and also NHL 16. So the guy's got enough spotlight. He's had an illustrious career. I think it's about time he hangs him up.
Some more sad news here coming out of Toronto and Russia specifically is that Rodion Amirov has passed away at the age of 21. He was the 15th overall pick by the Toronto Maple Leafs in 2020. I know that his cancer unfortunately took over and that he couldn't find a way back to health. So sad to hear about a young guy with lots of potential who just unfortunately didn't get the chance to live out his dream fully. But at least he was drafted to the NHL. That's something that no one can ever take from him. And it sounds like everyone in Toronto had really high praise for this kid and what he brought every day to the rink. We had a couple trades this week. The Montreal Canadiens traded Jeff Petrie to the Detroit Red Wings for Gustav Lindstrom. Cool little note here. Jeff Petrie's dad played for the Detroit Tigers, and he's actually going to wear his number in game as well. So that's a pretty cool ode to him being in Detroit. And the Buffalo Sabres sent Ilya Lyubushkin to the Anaheim Ducks for a 4th-round pick, and more of just a roster-shedding move. So any thoughts from you guys on either one of those trades?
The Petrie trade's cool. Detroit, I think, definitely needed to bulk that defense up, and I think Petrie's a good pickup for him for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool note just to have coming to Detroit, Motown, one of the greatest hockey teams in the NHL, and when your dad used to play for professional franchises, the Tigers, a historic one at that, it's kind of cool to have a father-son relationship saying, hey, I'm going to wear your number, Dad. It's pretty cool.
I think that this makes Detroit a much better team on defense for sure. Adding a guy like him, a veteran who can come in, maybe play beside Mo Sider or something, and just add some really good defensive depth to that team and a veteran voice. That's a guy that Steve Yzerman loves to add. In Tampa, he added guys like Eric Brewer, Braden Coburn, guys like that just brought in a veteran aspect to the team, and that's the kind of thing that Jeff Petrie brings to his team. He might not win a cup with them, but his job is to help these guys get to that step by being a good leader now.
Just one last thing about Jeff's dad there, Dan Petrie. He was actually on the 1984 World Series winning team for the Detroit Tigers there, and yeah, even talking about Tarps, about that team, that was I think the best time that even Detroit had their best uniforms for the Tigers, even way back in the day. Just that silver and orange accent was just really nice looking. Those were some really beautiful tarps.
Very clean. I like those.
Now imagine if Jeff could bring a championship to the Red Wings, and then they'd both have a championship brought back.
Yeah, that Yzer plan is coming together. Steve Yzerman, he's adding all these depth veteran players, and having Jeff Petrie on that blue line is going to really help out with all those young guys like Moritz Seider and
Edvinson.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think he knows what he's doing over there in Detroit, and I think, like you said, Dakota, maybe one of these years, very soon even, Detroit could be bringing a championship back to the Motown.
It'd be cool to see for sure.
All right, this week was full of signings going on. Lots of RFAs who have been waiting for contracts got them. Lots of extensions happening. So we'll start off with Logan Stanley re-signing with the Jets for 1 year, $1 million. The Flyers sign Oliver Bonk to his entry-level contract. The Lightning extend Brandon Hagel for 8 years, $6.5 million per year. The Lightning also sign Darren Radish to a 2-year, $975,000 per year average. The Leafs extend their big guy, Austin Matthews, to 4 years, $13.25 million per year. The Rangers re-sign Alexis Lafreniere for his 2 years, $2.325. The Oilers re-sign Evan Bouchard, 2 years, $3.9 million. Let's break these down, guys, and see your thoughts on what do you think of some of these.
Well, I'm going to start off with Matthews right out of the gate, giving him the highest paid contract in the NHL, but I think that you also just guaranteed Nylander possibly out the gate, essentially.
Yeah, he just basically knocked McKinnon down to the second spot for the highest paid contract, because now McKinnon's contract coming up in this next season would have been kicking into 12.6. Now Matthews having, his massive 13.2, that was just, nobody saw this coming. Everyone would have thought, hey, are they going to wait it out until into the season? But wow, just a monstrous contract, having $13 million.
Well, and also for a guy to be rumored to say that he was going to take a cut to keep that core around.
Right? Shades of McKinnon back in the day when he said he'd take a discount, and he actually did take a discount to keep guys around, and look where that got him. They got the 2022 Stanley Cup. So, Matthews was all talk there, but, he does deserve that contract. He's worth that $13 million, boys.
Yeah, I don't know. Here's the thing. I don't know if anyone is worth $13 million in this league, because it almost guarantees you're never going to win. Because, the McDavids and stuff, these teams have a hard time. We were talking about it the other day. Toronto's got 30 or 40% of their cap in 3 guys almost. That, how can you win when you're supposed to fill out 20 other roster spots and you only have 60% of your contract amount to do it? I don't see how this goes well. You're right. Nylander's probably gone. This means Bertuzzi's here for 1 year. I don't see how they bring Domi back next year like they said they were going to. He says it's supposed to be a long-term plan. Don't see how that works out for him. And they have have guys like Tavares, Marner, and Nyes in 2025 who all need contracts too. And we know with the cap going up, like what's Marner going to make? Because if you look at it debatably, yes, Matthews is worth that, but Marner might have a bigger impact on this team than Matthews does on a game-to-game basis. Yes, Matthews is putting the puck in the net, but a lot of it is, Marner's getting the puck in the defensive end most of the time. He's chasing guys down, and Marner's, setting him up on the power play. And Marner really is the facilitator of that team, so you wonder just what's he going to make. I'm hearing rumblings of $14 million. You're seeing it on social media that maybe he's going to ask for $14 million. Like, that's crazy. You have a $13 and $14 million guys on your team, and right now Tavares makes 11. So what's he going to make? He's got to drop to 7 or 6 at least, maybe even 5, because his production's not that high anymore. So I don't know. Their team to me is in trouble. Nylander's gone. He's not, because he's got to be choked. I'm happy he waited it out, because if he took like a 6.5 million, and then Matthews came in at 13.25, I think he would have demanded a trade on the spot, because it would have been like, these guys really aren't my buddies. Like, they said, let's all take a discount. I took a discount. They're all making 10 plus million, and here I am left with the crap, not with a good contract.
Well, here's my speculation about Brad Treliving is he knew the expectations taking over the Toronto Maple Leafs organization was like, hey, okay, we need to lock down our star player right now in Austin Matthews. Like, I'm not outing anyone else saying that Nylander, Tavares, Morgan Riley, and Marner are not star players, because they are. They are very, very good players, but their priority was to lock down Matthews because his contract was coming up this year. But now, I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Like, who would you, if you were Brad Treliving, let walk in 2025? Marner or Tavares? Who was your priority to lock down first?
Well, for sure Marner to me, but that's probably with productivity, with Tavares dropping down with age, right? And Marner's still young, where he could probably sign a long-term, or he'd probably be looking for a long-term deal. Yeah, I don't see Tavares being a priority once that contract's up.
And here's a very catchy trend with the Maple Leafs, is that they'll always sign these hometown guys to hometown discounts, and I think this trend needs to stop once upon a time coming soon, because you can give out all the hometown discounts you want, but it's going to start prioritizing who we're going to keep around and who's going to help us win in the long term. So I don't know, you got guys like Max Domi, he's a hometown product too, and Wayne Simmons, who has been sitting around for the last 2 seasons, he's a hometown product that they thought would come in and be that grit for their team. And now you got Ryan Reeves coming onto the team, which is going to ultimately take his place as the big gritty player on that team. And then Marner, Tavares, it's going to be interesting coming up for the Maple Leafs for sure.
Yeah, I think that they get both of them signed, to answer your question, because I think when you have them at 11 and 10, you're going to have a shift where it's going to be Tavares goes down to 7 or 8, and then Marner's going to get the bump. The guy who's definitely gone is Nylander. There's no way he's here come the beginning of next season. I think they keep him this year because they have to win. Their roster could win this year, and I think that's what they knew. But after this, they're going to be in so much cap detriment. I don't think that they are going to be close to winning, because they're just going to be tied. They're going to have their hands tied, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Yeah, you can have all the guys in front of you all you want, but even Toronto, they just signed Martin Jones to a 1 year, but they really need to find out about their goalie situation, because that's one thing that they haven't been able to figure out the last couple years.
They're one potential big goaltending injury away. Or what if they're Vegas? Somehow Vegas is the team who continually goes through 5 goalies a year, but what if it's Toronto? They have nothing. Yeah. Joseph Wall, he played well and a little bit of a flair there, but that's common in the NHL for guys who get their first crack. They're giving it everything they got. If you're relying on this guy night in, night out for months and in the Stanley Cup playoffs to hopefully win you a cup, it's very rare. Even guys like Matt Murray didn't play the whole playoffs when he was winning cups. Fleury would start to lose his energy because he played the whole season mostly. Murray came in a little bit more seasoned in the minors, came up, and he had big games and helped them win the cups. But it wasn't like he was playing for 3-4 months leading up to the playoffs. He was pretty fresh and energized as a young guy, so he gave them that boost.
And then think of that afterwards now, when Fleury left to Vegas in the expansion draft, Matt Murray was basically in Marc-Andre Fleury's skates, if you will, playing, all season long, and then he started getting gassed, and then all of a sudden Pittsburgh just started falling off. Like, who are you going to call up? Tristan Jarry, Casey DeSmith, Jeff Zakov? Like, it was a no-brainer, yeah.
Well, and also Nylander's contract is up in 2024, which also is Jake Muzzin's contract, that is also Murray's contract, and that is Samsonov's contract. Now, if you want Nylander to stay, all three of those guys are going to have to go, but you're left with no goalie.
Priority-wise, I'd take Jake Muzzin off that list because he's been so inconsistently, but it's not his fault. He's just been extremely injury prone. Like, he's been on the LTIR for so long. Like, and you know what? They have to just dump his contract somewhere. It's just not benefiting them at all.
Well, here's the thing. They need that contract right now because LTIR is giving them an extra bump in cap space, which has allowed them to sign Bertuzzi and Domi and keep this roster together. But going forward, like next year with those LTIR contracts gone, like if Murray comes back this year, which I don't know if he will, but if he does, then his how are they going to fit his contract in? Almost $5 million. And then they got Muzzin, who's most likely done for his career. He's just got too many injuries. If they have to come back, they're already $13 million over the cap. They're only $3 million with their LTIR. So we don't know how they're even going to start the season $3 million over. They got to figure that out. So it's like if those guys come back and the NHL deems them healthy, they're in a cap hell that they don't know how to get out of.
Well, even with Brad Treliving, like his situation in Calgary, like you had guys just walking, at the end of their contract year and you couldn't get any assets for it. Like, what if Brad Treliving can get some assets for Nylander before he pulls a Johnny Gaudreau by the end of the year, right? Like, I know Nylander's like projected, value, it's high. They could get some easily good high-end prospects or even draft picks the next few years, but I hope he does not find himself again in a Johnny Gaudreau situation where he says, yeah, I'd like to stay, because even I've seen news reports online. Nylander would love to stay with the Maple Leafs, but is he going to say, I'm going to stick around, but then actually, no, I'm walking in the off season?
Well, so then you lose him, and then you're gonna lose one of two of those goalies for sure, Muzzin, Bertuzzi, and Domi. Like, those are all big contracts that might just walk.
Yeah, Toronto has definitely put all their chips in for this season to see, because they just came off their first round win in 18 years. So yeah, they're definitely putting it all in to see if they can get to the top.
That's why I think, so going back to what you said earlier about how it was all about focusing on Matthews, I think that's why they did Matthews' contract, and I think they're going to let Nylander walk. I think that this year, they're like, hey, if we got our big guy locked down, if that cost us Nylander, but we win a cup, I guess. Like, the Toronto ownership, the Toronto faithful, they need a cup. I don't want them to win a cup. I want them to keep rotting at the bottom, but this team, if any team of the Toronto Maple Leafs over the last couple of years is good enough to get it done, I think this is the team. I just think that, yes, they're going to lose Nylander. They could lose Tavares. I just think, they're gonna be in such a situation where they cannot continue with these guys on their contracts because it's way too much for them.
Well, yeah, you'll be stoked for the first day of winning the cup, but then as the GM, you're like, oh, well, damn, I got all these guys to sign, but no money to do it with.
Yeah, here's my hypothetical thing with Nylander. Like, if I was Brad Treliving in his shoes, I'd probably try to make a trade with the Anaheim Ducks. Having John Gibson reportedly saying over and over, he's done. He's done with the organization. And Toronto needs a veteran goalie, someone who's been consistent. So I think he should go out and try to get John Gibson, a few high-end prospects, maybe two at best, and I'd say maybe we can make that deal work.
The only thing about that is that they're now hamstrung because Nylander has a 10-team no-trade list, and he gets to supply that now. It wasn't given at the beginning of his contract. When they say, hey, will you waive your no-trade clause, then he gets to give them 10 teams, and to me, there's not a chance the Anaheim Ducks are on that list. There's no way. There's no way Winnipeg's on that list. There's no way Philadelphia's on that list. There's no way Vancouver's on that list. Like, so where, those are the goalies that are potentially available. The Demkos, the Carter Harts, the Hellebucks, the Gibsons. So it's like, who can they send him to that he's going to want to play for? Most likely a winning team because he knows he's a good enough player to be on a winning team, but has a goalie that they're willing to give up to get him. It's a tough situation. I don't think that they can find the happy ground in the middle where he's happy to go to a team that's a mid-contender and a mid-contender team that's willing to give up their starting goalie, I just think it's way too hard of a situation for them to get out of. To me, he's gone and a year for nothing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Riley, but I'm just, like I said hypothetically at the beginning there, like Anaheim's coming into the season with 16 mil in cap space, which is pretty good. And, having what you said is that, yeah, Anaheim, everyone knows they're not going to be a contender again this year. And I know Nylander, he's going to want to go to a contender, so it could potentially happen, because even John Gibson, he's from Pittsburgh, okay, he would love to probably play closer to home, you know what I'm saying? And like I said, he's wanting out, and Toronto might be a fit for him, but we'll have to see.
Just a side note with Gibson as well, also has a 10-team no-trade clause as well in that contract, so closer to home. I mean, he's an American, he might want to be an American franchise. Yeah, Toronto might be close, but does he want to go to a Canadian market?
Yeah, instead of Nedeljkovic, I think Pittsburgh even should have gotten a hometown discount with John Gibson. They could have used his veteran presence there, on a side note.
The thing about Anaheim's $60 million in cap is that both Zegras and Drysdale are not signed yet. So let's say Zegras pulls in, Troy Terry money, so in like that $7 million range. And on the high end, I don't think he deserves this, but let's say on the high end, Drysdale signs for $3 million, right? That's too much for him, but let's say that's $10 million. That leaves you with $6 million, and then you have Gibson's contract. So you would just be able to fit Nylander's contract in there to get underneath the cap. So we'll see what those numbers fall out with those two. I know that's their priority, and then who knows if that's even the direction Anaheim wants to go, because Nylander will probably help them win games, and we're not necessarily thinking that Anaheim wants to win games right now. He's kind of older, right? Does he fit the window that they're looking for their team? He's kind of around Troy Terry's age, plays the same position. Are they looking for that kind of player right now? I'm just not sure that's on either team's radar for what they want.
Well, plus then you got Leo Carlson as well. I guess he's on the left side and Nylander's a right wing, which I think Anaheim lacks.
I think it's just Terry on the right.
Just Terry, yeah.
As a star, at least. As a good right winger.
So, I mean, he'd be a good second, first liner, I guess. But, again, yeah, is Anaheim wanting that direction, or do they want to build this team younger and more exciting to watch? And I would think maybe Zegras and Drysdale hopefully maybe sign a bridge deal. Maybe not long term, but short term.
I would think so. Well, because they have $16 million, Zegras could sign his big contract, his big ticket. Like if Zegras signs $9 million for 8 years. Like right now, that's kind of too much. But maybe in like 2 years, when the cap goes up, and if he took a bridge deal, maybe he's going to ask for 10 plus. So maybe the 9 is like in the beginning it's too much, but on the back end it's going to be like just the right number. So I think that he might sign his big ticket, but who knows? Maybe he does just take his bridge deal. I'm not sure. I know Drysdale will. There's no way. He's not progressed enough to take a long-term deal. He's definitely doing 2 to 3 years, kind of like Lafreniere, his Team Canada World Junior teammate there, who just took his 2-year, $2.325 million deal, which we kind of assumed he would get in that range.
And it's a very safe deal. I mean, you're still trying to see if this kid can come out of his shell as the star player they were hoping to get at number 1. And yeah, I think they're giving him more than enough time to prove himself with the amount of money he's getting.
Yeah, just in addition to that Drysdale comment, I mean, coming out of the Erie Otters, like he was a highly touted prospect too, and just like Lafreniere, as you mentioned, like the two of them are kind of in the same boat. Like they blossomed pretty big in juniors, but at the NHL level, they haven't really produced as highly as they thought they would. So it's definitely something to consider to see if he can still make that next step, or if he's just still going to be that mediocre, low pairing defenseman. So I think Anaheim should just go with it a little bit less risky, and kind of, like you said, get a nice bridge deal in there and just see nothing too long term, but at least just the right amount of money, maybe at least $2 million.
Well, and even Zegras, in my opinion, last season, watch him, he was kind of spotty. Like, he wasn't consistent with his points. He'd get, like, one game where he'd get a couple points, and then he would drop a few games, and you wouldn't see him, or he'd get 1 point, but it was kind of like a sneaky point. Like, he wasn't, like, a very consistent player. He'd have a couple highlights here and there, but...
Well, exactly. The only highlights you'd really see is not him scoring goals, but you'd see him flashing the dekes, or, the Michigans, or even, like, behind the net. Like, it's just... But the production is not there, but the highlight reel is. So
the skill is definitely there.
Yeah. But
he needs the line mates with him to be on the same page as him, I think, and we'll probably start seeing his point production go up.
Yeah, having a Nylander there, even it's potential, hypothetically, be pretty good to keep those numbers producing even higher.
If I'm Zegras' agent, though, I don't even look necessarily just at points. I say, this guy is on YouTube, he's on TikTok, in videos all the time. What percentage is he pulling fans to the stadium now? Not just to watch him score goals, to watch him deke guys out, to watch him do some crazy stuff that maybe doesn't work out. He's now an entertainment value, not just a production value. So I think that his agents are going to come at it from that standpoint, because we have to think too, off the ice, there's a whole lot that these guys agree to that are in their contracts that we don't hear about. So I think that's something that his agents are working for in the contract, is like, hey, this guy's filling seats in Anaheim, California, where we suck and we're not going to have many fans, but they're coming to watch Trevor Zegras, his fun personality, his California vibes. That's who they're coming to watch, so I think that's a point of emphasis for his agent.
Oh, I was just going to say on that note, just the excitement value. Like, it's, the tough market in Southern California, but the game of hockey is growing down there. The LA Kings have been there forever. You have the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, once upon a time now the Anaheim Ducks, and they've been growing as a team the last few seasons and having, that entertainment value. Like, he can do all the dekes he wants, and like you said, maybe that's just part of his contract. And, he was a rookie a couple seasons ago, and he got the cover of NHL 23. So it's just like his name is definitely floating around there in the hockey community. Very, very, very good in the right direction. So,
and his personality suits the California lifestyle so well that he suits an Anaheim uniform. I think like he's got like that surfer dude look. He just suits the California lifestyle, and I think that's. People are relating to that, and they're like, wow, like this guy's, he's like what I want to be. So he's probably bringing in younger crowds, probably middle-aged crowds, and I think Anaheim wants that. They want to bring in that younger crowd, hype the arena up, and he's definitely the guy to do that for Anaheim.
Totally agree with that. He definitely looks like a surfer boy.
A guy who could make kind of similar to what we see Zegras make potentially even is Brandon Hagel for the Lightning, making his $6.5 million for 8 years. Now, it's not often when you're comparing signings in a week that the highest contract is $7 million more than the second highest contract. But Hagel gets paid, I think, a steal of a deal. Both of the Lightning's deals are steals. Radish at 2 years for under $1 million for a guy who's going to be in their top four, it seems. And then Brandon Hagel for $6.5 million. If he keeps scoring 30 goals a year or even 25 plus, $6.5 million is nothing for that kind of production for a guy who's 60 to 70 points, maybe playing with Point and Kucherov. So I love that deal for the Lightning, both those deals, and I think that's going to age well for them.
I hope so too. I mean, for a guy to be dropped by Chicago in 2016 and then to come back and earn the money he did with Tampa, I mean that's an awesome comeback story for a guy like him.
The last big one was the Oilers finally spent every penny they had left, giving Evan Bouchard his $3.9 million for the next 2 years. I mean, he's obviously worth more than that, but it just came down to the fact that the Oilers had $3.9 million in cap and he had no contract, and I think that they just made it work. He finally just had the Oilers say, fine, we'll pay you everything we have, because I think he brought his number down. I think he didn't want anyone traded to make cap space, but I think he wanted them to make a move to make some more cap so he could get around the $5 million range at least. So him at just under 4 is a wicked deal for Edmonton, especially for 2 years. I can't believe he signed more than one. So I think, yeah, it's just a killer deal for Edmonton. Unfortunate for him with the situation, but I think he'll get a big payday after the 2 years.
Yeah, if not Edmonton, somewhere else for sure. I think he's a player that has come out of his shell, and Edmonton needs that in defensemen at least.
Okay, on to some more fun news in the gaming world. They have granted Cale Makar the EA Sports NHL 24 cover athlete. I think for the hype that he has around him, that it's well deserved, and I think that he's a guy who's going to rep this well and be a good face of the brand for EA.
It's funny because at NHL EA Sports Community Day, they were sending screenshots of Rasmus Dahlin, doing new Selly movements and everything, and we were all speculating it was going to be Rasmus Dahlin, which would have been fun to see. It would have been cool, but being an Avs fan, I kind of love seeing Cale Makar taking that nod to be the NHL cover athlete. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that they went with a defenseman route this year again. I think the last time I seen one was PK, but Makar definitely well deserved of that cover athlete.
Speaking of the cover too, I've seen a lot of hate online saying that the cover's too bland. Now, we went from 19 of just having all the EA Sports had just different colors with a pose of an athlete, right? But then some guys were saying, oh, it's too plain, it doesn't look real. But for me personally, having last year of just Zegras and Sarah Nurse mean mugging, behind two palm trees, in street clothes with a jersey on, like that just doesn't look too realistic to me. Having Cale Makar this year in an arena setting, looking like he's deking out his opponent, that to me looks like a real good on ice shot that suits an NHL cover photo. So I don't know why it's getting a lot of hate. I personally love it. What are your guys' thoughts?
Well, let's just be honest here to people who think that. We're talking about hockey. You have guys and ice. Like, how do you get more creative than, yes, last year putting them in the palm trees off the ice, right? Like, talk about California vibes. That's what they went for, and that's what they got. But what are you supposed to do? Because you're going to have him doing one of his big hits. Well, then you have to include whoever he's hitting on the cover, and you have to get their approval that they're getting absolutely rocked on the cover of NHL. No one's going to sign that they want their name or jersey, or even if it's just a number on the arm, if they're not including the player. Like, who that player is on that team. So it's like, what else are they supposed to do if they're only putting one person on it? Like, they're limited. It's just a person on ice skating, and you got to try and get a still shot of them doing some kind of a move, but not something that's going to be too confusing to understand what they're doing, but enough that the average fan knows. So to me, it's perfect. It's just what you look for in a cover.
Well, I've always been a fan of the action shots on the covers with the background of the rink or whatever, and to me that's just hockey, right? Like, what does Zegras and Sarah Nurse on the cover standing on blocks of ice show for hockey? Like, yeah, California vibes, whatever, but that's not hockey. Hockey is on the ice, in your gear, skating.
Yeah, this is a real cover again. But I'd like to know your guys' thoughts real quick. Like, my favorite NHL cover in recent memory was NHL 19. We had PK Subban donning the cover, and he was just in his famous, goal celebration, and that to me went hard. That looked really fresh. What was your guys' favorite NHL cover in recent memory?
Well, as a Lightning fan, I know that we had LeCavalier in 06, and we had Stamkos in 12. So probably the Stammer in 12 was my favorite one. 12 is my favorite number too, so it kind of lined up. That was neat. Stamkos being my favorite player. It was a pretty cool connection all the way around. So definitely 12 for me.
And he was taking that slap shot too, like in action for that cover. So again, we're going back to that whole action shots of real authenticity for the cover.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with 03, I think, when Iggy donned the cover, I believe. And they had he was wearing the Blassie jersey, which has always been an all-time favorite for me. But again, he was in gear, he was playing the game of hockey, and so I just like those shots.
I just want to throw one more thing out there. If you really want to compare that, what does EA Sports do for NFL? It's just guys like Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes sitting with like a knee on the ground staring at a camera. Like, they're in their football gear still. What does FIFA do? They're in their soccer gear. What does MLB do? It's usually someone swinging a bat in an action shot, or a pitcher throwing a pitch in an action shot. NBA 2K, not EA, usually a basketball player doing something basketball related, or again like a fashion thing, right? Something like that. But what do they want from NHL to stereotype them saying that they're being bland? Well, they're just run by EA, who does that for all their games, but it's also what 2K does and what other sporting games does. Whether you look at WWE or whatever, it's just one of their main athletes who's posted on the cover. There's nothing special about it. It's to promote the game with who is the most popular player at the moment, and right now it's Cale Makar for the Avs.
And honestly, who cares what's on the cover? You're playing the game. You're gonna buy it. You're gonna buy it.
Regardless, it could be copy and paste every year, like the last few chels. But yeah, you're definitely gonna be buy it one way or another, regardless of the cover athlete is.
Our final topic of the day is that the NHL and NHLPA are in discussion with the IOC about more international involvement. This is including bringing back the World Cup of Hockey, adding the Olympics to the schedule, and alternating those about every 2 years. And then you will have also potentially a different and new international tournament as a one-off just in 2025 to get things started. So what are your guys' thoughts on adding back international play for NHL players?
I think that's awesome. I mean, when you think of the Olympics, they're bringing all their best athletes to compete against other countries. Well, some of the best athletes in hockey happen to play in the NHL from all over the world. So I think that's awesome and exciting to bring back for sure.
Yeah, we haven't seen that since Sochi, Russia in 2014 when Canada won gold. So it'll be amazing to see the Canadian roster coming up for the next Olympics, like having Connor Bedard, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon. Like, it's going to definitely be very, very exciting to watch.
What I've always found kind of ironic about the Olympics is everyone complains that NHL players shouldn't be there because it's supposed to be amateur athlete versus amateur athlete. What professional gymnast that's making $1 million in sponsorships is considered amateur to me? Like, I don't understand how that's considered amateur. It's like, oh, Simone Biles is going to the Olympics. Well, no, duh. Like, she has the best talent and she's a professional in the gymnastics world. There's just no league for them to be considered a professional league. So it's like they're as professional as it gets, but yet it's wrong for hockey players to bring the best of theirs if they're not amateurs. So to me, it just makes no sense. Obviously, you get cool stories like Miracle on Ice with USA, where the college kids went over there and beat Russia, but the way that the hockey is nowadays, you will never have that happen again. Way too much skill, way too much talent on a team like Russia coming in versus, college kids from the US. It just wouldn't happen. Russia's pro league is just way better than any college kids we could send over there. So yeah, I think that NHL players, professionals, should be allowed there because the gymnasts, the swimmers, they are all professionals in their own right, in their own sports.
Yeah, and they were all amateurs once upon a time, and you're representing your country because you are actually the best from your country in whatever you are doing. Whether it be swimming, track and field, hockey, baseball, whatever, you're there to represent your country, and you are technically the best from where you're from. Simple as that.
Well, and look at some of these countries that didn't have a whole lot of great hockey players, maybe way back when, but now, like Germany, for instance, Draisaitl. You're going to tell me Germany doesn't want Draisaitl playing on their Olympic team in the Olympics?
Yeah, it'd be very hypocritical. Like, he is technically the best, and you're going to say, no, we don't want you because you're from the NHL? Like, it has to be a two-way street here, boys. They have to let them back.
And more so than anywhere is in Europe, being an Olympic athlete, like a massive deal. So yeah, the Germans, the Czechs, right, the Slovaks, they don't get many chances to display themselves on an Olympic stage. And the chance for them, just because they got so good at the game, they made it to North America, made it to the NHL, have a chance to live out that dream. Now they're penalized in not being allowed to represent their country at the Olympics. To me, it's a joke. It's so dumb. I don't know why that's even a thing.
Well, and some of these kids have had dreams wearing their country's colors at the Olympics, and all these kids now have to choose whether or not they want to play in the NHL or one day represent their country. Like, that's gotta suck.
Look at Ovechkin saying, look, I'm playing for Russia. 2016, he foregoed his paychecks. The Capitals were good about it, so they suspended him from the team for the length of the Olympics. He came back the game after that it was done. He played, and he started making his checks again. Basically, because they respected him like they do now with his goal scoring records, they've been giving him everything, being their perennial star he's been. But do you really want your best players foregoing their money to have to go represent their country? Like, that just leaves a bad look on the NHL. Luckily, they only had one guy do it, but at the time, arguably the biggest star, 2016, arguably Ovechkin.
Well, and you think NHL's probably going to lose money out of that too, seeing all their big stars go over to the Olympics.
Yeah, the main problem for me with the whole, revenue and earnings and everything is that, well, not the main problem for me, but the main problem between the IOC and the NHL is the insurance, right? If a player gets injured at the Olympics, the NHL is expecting the IOC to cover that insurance for the player, but the IOC doesn't want to cover as high of insurance as the NHL needs for these players. Like, now let's talk about Austin Matthews. $13 million. He gets injured at the Olympics. He's owed $13 million by the Toronto Maple Leafs and the NHL. If he's on long-term injured reserve, it's paid by the NHL. And both of them are on the hook for a guy who didn't get hurt playing for them. So that's where the separation is in who's going to pay. Because could you imagine the NHL just, it's fine. He went and played for someone else, and now we're footing a $13.25 million million bill. Oh well, like they can't do that. That's just something that they can't agree upon. So that's where the big problem has been. The NHL hasn't been able to get them to agree on their insurance rules that they need to cover these guys getting injured if they do go away. But I think that they just need to make a break in the schedule, and that way it can just be separate from the NHL season, and hopefully they can figure that out instead of trying to force guys to go over mid-season, avoiding their contracts and not getting paid.
Or you do some where maybe half your team is professionals from the NHL and half your team is amateurs. Maybe, so you're not fronting as much money, but I don't know.
Maybe even try to do something like during the summer months when it's the off season. That's potentially a situation that could come to flourishing.
One thing I would like to see that would be really cool, to me anyways, is how the NFL, the teams that don't make to the Super Bowl, you got Pro Bowlers. I think it'd be cool to see something where, to a certain extent in the playoffs, well, probably the finals, I guess, whoever doesn't make the finals, you got guys elected to go play in essentially a secondary all-star game of the year, realistically. But that'd be cool to see kind of 2 all-star games in the year, I think.
I like that idea.
What I've heard too is that NHL players like the All-Star break because it gives them a break in the season. So I can't see them wanting to get away from that. So I think you're right, like a secondary competition, keeping guys going. Make it for money, right? Make it team wins $1 million each or whatever of the guys that you get there, and do it with the 16 teams. Because look at this year, like we've been talking about, Trevor Zegras wasn't there, Sidney Crosby wasn't there, Evgeny Malkin wasn't in the playoffs, right? Like all these guys, the Tage Thompsons, they have this huge following around them about people who would want to watch them during playoff time, but now they're done. So you set up a competition like you're saying. I think it brings money in that wouldn't otherwise be there.
Well, and bring back East versus West. Don't do division teams. Do a East team versus a West team again. That'd be cool.
Well, even for the IOC, what they have to look forward to is that, think of how much revenue they would get if they brought all these NHL players, like from these, like, say if the IOC has an Olympics coming up in Sweden or Norway or anywhere, around the world, and think of how much revenue that they would be making rather than paying out for the insurance of these injured players, hypothetically, if they were to get hurt over there. Like, they would be making mind-boggling money of how many people would be coming in droves to watch all these guys that they cannot come overseas to see in North America. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be more convenient for them to see them, say, like, okay, the NHL does their global series, once a year. But think of like a tournament that's like, there for a while, and they can see these guys like over and over and over in that period of time,
repping their flag.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for the IOC it'd be more profitable for them to go through with this for sure.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to the Olympics and more international play, and hopefully they do figure out something of an event, like you said, Dak, in the playoff window where guys can compete for money and be competitive outside of the playoffs. So that is it for episode 7 of Gameday Tarps. As always, rate and review, and thanks again for listening.